Hey everyone, Will and I are back this week to talk about some AI news. Hey Will, how are you doing?
Yeah, good. Thanks, Jill. How are you?
I'm great. We have at least 5 topics to cover today. OpenAI's voice assistant, the Windows Recall AI, Anthropic and the AI black box, Google's AI watermark, also some AI legislation, and I'm sure you're going to come up with some other topics for us to chat about too. But I would love to start with something. So, this is a little insight into me. I don't do it anymore, but when I was a teacher, I used to get People magazine weekly, and it would always come on Fridays. So I would come home from school and it would be in my mailbox, and I would sit down either with a snack or a cup of coffee or whatever, and I would read People magazine from cover to cover and take in like all the celebrity gossip. I don't really do that anymore, but I do some it does. It was fun. But I do like to kind of be in the know and keep up to date with what's going on. So I had read this article from the New York Times, although it's been listed in various other places. Scarlett Johansson said no, but OpenAI's virtual assistant sounds just like her. So I'm sure you knew that there are several voices that were created for OpenAI's voice assistant, but there has been some behind the scenes drama. According to Scarlett Johansson, Sam Altman had reached out to her agent 2 different times this year in September. And then just recently, before I think the demo last week, asking if she would consider licensing her voice for a virtual assistant, which they had recorded and developed 5 voices, by the way. One ended up being called Sky. She had said no, but apparently the voice that was out there or I guess put out there sounded just like her. She had like some family friends reach out to her and be like, hey, did you happen to notice Sky sounds just like your voice? And so they pushed out this voice before she could really respond. She shared this statement. I'd like to read a little bit of it. In a time when we are all grappling with deepfakes and the protection of our own likeness, our own work, our own identities, I believe these are questions that deserve absolute clarity. So I had a few thoughts about this. I was already wondering this prior to even reading the story, but this scenario really raises questions about the ethical use of AI to replicate someone's voice or other features without explicit yes consent. And even though OpenAI says the voice is not and was not intended to be Scarlett Johansson's, it's so similar and seems very recognizable. So I understand her concern, and they did pull the voice down.
I heard on X a similar thing that Sam Altman had reached out to Scarlett Johansson previously before ChatGPT 4.0 came out, and due to different reasons, she decided not to pursue this path. And they were basically asking her to generate voice using their models, her voice. And then, yeah, I heard again that before last week's demo, he reached out again and said, do you want to reconsider? She doesn't say that she was not going to do it or was going to do it. She just hadn't got back to them, like you said, and they released Sky, which sounds just like her. I think it's a little bit of a silly move from OpenAI. It kind of seems spiteful. It's just like they released her voice just because she said no. But I don't
Or
see
why didn't they just release the other 4 voices? And they could have
that.
always added a 5th one later if the opportunity came up for them to collaborate. Because I do think his original intention when he reached out to her was to try to create a sense of trust and collaboration between the tech community and the artist community, I think.
I didn't even think of that, but that makes a lot of sense, especially with movie stars having kind of boycotted or they had a lot of press against AI. It seems like a weird move to do it without her explicit permission. It's good they've taken it down quickly.
But I don't think they would have taken it down without, because she had gotten lawyers involved. If she had not, it'd still be out there probably.
I think it's good for her that she did that because it does set kind of a good for like you've crossed the line. We're going to get lawyers involved. Yeah, I think it's
Right.
good.
And she advocated for herself and other artists and actors and actresses out there in the community.
Yeah, yeah.
So next up, from AP News, Microsoft's AI chatbot will recall everything you do on a PC. Microsoft revealed a new type of AI-enhanced Windows PCs that will start rolling out on some computers in June 18th. I don't think it'll be available on all. These will incorporate Copilot, which is its AI assistant, into Windows. And Windows Recall is the name of this main feature, similar to what humans experience as what I would compare to photographic memory. I assume people will purchase for personal use, but it seems like it's marketed more for professional work purposes. I grabbed a quote from the article. Microsoft promises to protect users' privacy by giving them the option to filter out what they don't want tracked and keeping the tracking on the device. So my thoughts were here. I wonder if this is going to become a choice for either organizations or individuals between productivity and privacy.
It's an interesting trade-off, isn't it? You could give Microsoft all of this access to everything that you're doing on your computer, kind of Big Brother style. You're basically watched, and it will be able to help you faster is the idea. But yeah, it's at the expense of your privacy. So it'll be interesting to see how people react to it. One interesting reaction I saw to this on X was Elon Musk, actually. And he basically retweeted the Microsoft tweet and said, this is a Black Mirror episode. We'll definitely be turning this feature off. So
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
an interesting take from him. It also made me think, like, to what extent are our computers already watching everything we do? They have so much data on all of us.
Right. I almost wonder how different it is than you're browsing a website. Then separately, you go to Google to search something or go to some other website, but magically, an advertisement for the previous website that you were hunting on yesterday shows up.
Yeah.
So it's clearly tracked your activity. So I'm wondering, how is this going to be different? We won't really know until after it's released.
Yeah, if it does, yeah.
So from Wired, AI is a black box. Anthropic figured out a way to look inside. I was actually so happy when I saw this because I know we've discussed Anthropic before. So when I hear black box, and I don't know if you can relate, but I always think of airplanes, and I know it sounds morbid, but isn't that how engineers and researchers learn what happened in the event that there's a crash? The black box is designed to be indestructible because it records all the data from the flight. So Chris Olah, and I apologize if I pronounced the name incorrectly, the co-founder of Anthropic, is really focused in on what's going on inside artificial neural networks. That's his big overarching question that he's into researching. He's working so hard to reverse engineer LLMs to figure out exactly how the outputs are created, like the behind the scenes, right? A great quote was, their approach treats artificial neurons like letters of Western alphabets, which don't usually have meaning on their own, but can be strung together sequentially to have meaning. They're using a technique called dictionary learning, by the way. And I thought this was a bit related to last week. I know you had reported on or had mentioned that Instagram co-founder Mike Krieger joins Amazon-backed Anthropic. He's going to be the chief product officer, and he's coming from Instagram, where he grew the platform to 1 billion users and increased its engineering team to more than 450 people during his time at Instagram. So I know that I just brought up two totally different topics there, although related. I think it's really cool to see that Anthropic is kind of trying to better understand the internal processes of AI models, and then also this idea of collaboration between AI researchers and experts is a job on its own, right? Whether it existed or not in the past, it's needed now.
I found the black box idea, well, it's very critical, and we're at a critical time to understand what is going on inside that black box, because it plays into so many other things that we've talked about before, just people's general trust of AI, and then even on the business side of things, like businesses, enterprises' trust of AI. Because if, your data is getting sent to Anthropic and they're doing something with it, and then you're getting data sent back, which is like the model's response, you want to know what actually is going on inside that model with my data. And if Anthropic or OpenAI or, Google can't answer that, then it's a big barrier for a lot of companies and general trust. And I think a lot of companies must be doing this because, they have to be. Otherwise, they're just missing out on understanding what they've built.
I'm actually going to fast forward a little bit. I wasn't about to bring this up, but I feel like it's really relevant to what we were just talking about. I read Morning Brew, I read Tech Brew, and so this one article caught my eye, but also I know you had reported on this last week. You mentioned something. I kind of did some more digging. Schumer seeks to forge a path for AI legislation. If anybody's wondering, they're referring to Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer. He's fighting for how he feels Congress should tackle AI policy. He and three colleagues, Senator Mike Rounds, Senator Martin Heinrich, and Senator Todd Young, shared a roadmap. It's public. I was able to click on it. It is a 30-page document, so I'm still making my way through, but I did read the introduction pretty thoroughly. Tech Brew says, this matters because the new roadmap comes as governments around the world have been considering ways to rein in the ill effects of generative AI while also competing in geopolitical arms race around the tech. A little bit of background that I learned, by the way, from reading part of the document. A bipartisan Senate AI working group was formed to address AI's benefits and risks, which I think was cool. Its goal is really to create conversation and to instill policies. The roadmap shares a lot of proposals and recommendations, including a call for $32 billion per year for AI innovation, as proposed by the National Security Commission. I know you were aware of that also. I think it's really neat that the roadmap is broken down into categories like elections, privacy, national security, copyright. Personally, this roadmap gives me a sense of reassurance knowing that lawmakers are actively discussing AI. However, I could see how it might create a sense of overwhelm for others since there are so many different policy domains that need to be explored. And this is where it's so important for the general public to seek out reliable educational resources, to maybe participate in conversations, and maybe even reach out to their local government representatives to open up this conversation and share their concerns and also aspirations. Any thoughts?
First of all, seeing the $32 billion investment is like a big headline that just, catches your attention regardless of what it is. So I was like, wow, that's great that it's in AI and AI regulation and ensuring it kind of doesn't go outside of these boundaries of useful tech or tech for good. And then I kind of just started thinking like, 32 billion, it's a big number and it like grabs my attention, but what actually can you do with 32 billion? Obviously a lot. But I think I remember OpenAI initially raised $1 billion in 2019. That was 2019. So that's like 5 years ago now. And I think they raised 10 billion recently. I'll have to fact check that. But when you just put that into perspective, that's one company that's got 10 billion this year and goodness knows what before that. And we've got 32 billion budget for regulation and kind of mitigating the impact, which is a good start, don't get me wrong. But yeah, it just made me think a bit more.
It's so much money, but also in the grand scheme, where is all the money coming from, right?
It's going to be a brand new industry to safeguard, or not a brand new industry, but it's going to really expand to safeguard the effects of AI. Even in terms of, I was talking with someone the other day about insurance and AI, and it's kind of completely changing the way insurance is done because there's now even less uncertainty, which is a challenge for insurers because the whole business model is now getting turned around. The advance of AI will just make the safeguarding a huge industry that has a lot of problems that need solving.
I know I'm going to spend a little more time trying to read through some more of the sections of that 30-page document. And the fact that it's available for the public to view was the bigger piece of the puzzle for me, that anyone can access it and read through it. I like the transparency. I liked learning the discussions that they're having behind the scenes and where they want to go with the discussions. So I was appreciative to see that. Similar to how last week when we were talking about the New York Times and how they kind of made an AI team also to be very transparent about how they're using AI. I like seeing that people are aware of its implications, positive and negative, and how can we go about this safely.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the right direction that we need to go in, and it's good that bigger organizations and governments are now making that really clear.
I learned something from you that Google devised a new watermark for AI-made text, SynthID. It will automatically watermark text generated by Google's Gemini AI programs in the Gemini app or on the web. It's already, from what I understand, managed video and images, so text will be the new addition. And from the article that I had read, the watermark is less detectable when content has been thoroughly rewritten or translated, so I have to imagine it really depends how you're using the AI. If you're literally doing a copy and paste or making minor tweaks, the watermark is going to catch it. But if you're really using AI for basics and brainstorming and just to kind of get the ideas flowing, and then you take it totally on your own from there, it's a completely different conversation.
The example that immediately popped to mind was education. And I know at my university and a bunch of other universities, they have problems with plagiarism. The
And
problem is
plagiarism, it has existed for years, so this is not a new problem. I just think that now it's more easily accessible.
definitely, yeah. I mean, you can have like, a 10-page essay wrote in 5 minutes. I mean, it would be silly to just turn that in as it is without editing it and making it your own. But if that's what someone were to do, it's hard for the university to say, you wrote this, you didn't write it. And this is what Google's providing. Like, this is a solution to plagiarism in that sense. Well, just like you said, when will the watermark become, what's the level that you say, like if I've edited it and the watermark is like a bit less visible, what the level that you say, like, okay, this is the acceptable level that you edited? That'll be interesting to see where people draw that line.
William, is there anything else we have not covered that either has come up recently in the news or anything you'd like to share or something from a previous newsletter that we did not cover today?
One about emissions in relation to AI. It's been on my mind at least because one of the companies at HF0, the startup accelerator that ClerkChat was part of, they were called Recursal AI. Their main kind of stat was that the current AI architecture scales quadratically. So basically, the more words you have, the more energy you have, the more energy it requires quadratically. And they were building one that scales linearly, so it's like much less energy intensive. But it just made me think like, wow, that's ridiculous. With a lot of AI usage, that would be a huge amount of energy. And just a kind of stat that I found to back that up was that Microsoft's emissions spiked 29% in 2023, so not even 2024 yet, largely due to AI resources, the servers that requires and the infrastructure that requires.
When I spoke to Pete Bernard many episodes ago, he also spoke about this idea of sustainability and the amount of energy that AI is putting into the environment. So it is something for us all to be mindful of.
Yeah, and the other thing is it's like the emissions that are getting put out, but also things that are needed to keep AI running. So for example, a lot of water's needed to keep all of the components cool, not literally going through them, but cooling. Maybe you've heard of Microsoft had these underwater data centers.
Yeah.
It was a big thing like maybe 6 months ago, and it's because the water kind of cools this hardware. But yeah, usually at data centers, I think they pump water around, which is a huge water waste, and water usage is a big component of emissions as well. So yeah,
Of course, my brain now goes to what if there's a teeny tiny little crack and now the water starts seeping in? What happens to all those processors and pieces of equipment? That's what I'm thinking.
They're fried. That's it. They're gone. Yeah. Yeah.
We can't win, it sounds like.
And then one of the interesting article that I read was that Hugging Face, the artificial intelligence open source company, is sharing 10 million worth of compute power to help smaller companies beat bigger AI companies. So
Oh, interesting.
yeah, it's called Zero GPU, and GPUs are the main hardware component that's required for artificial intelligence and machine learning. And I thought that was cool, like 10 million grant for small startups, which again, it's not a lot of money, but if you're a small startup, like really, really small, like 1 or 2 people, maybe even one person, a small percentage of that, like even 100,000 or 10,000, could just be the kickstart that you need that then gets you big funding from a VC or investors. So I thought that was a really good initiative just to start leveling the playing field in terms of people who want to put their own models out there or own infrastructure, rather than just having these big giants, OpenAI, Google, Microsoft.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Thank you for the great ad. I appreciate it. It was good to see you this week, as usual.
And you?
And we'll chat again next week, okay, Will?
Okay, great. Have a nice week.
See you soon.